How did Nazi Germany rise to power? Welcome to our exploration of one of history's darkest chapter, World War II. Let's start by setting the stage. World War I have just ended. Germany is in chaos, defeated and humiliated. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalty on the country. Repayment, territorial losses, and the military restrictions cripple the nation. The German people are angry, confused, and looking for someone to blame. Then enter the Weimar Republic, Germany's attempt at democracy. But this new government faces enormous challenges from the start. Hyperinflation hit in 1923, making money practically worthless. Imagine carrying a lot of cash to buy a loaf of bread. The middle class is wiped out and the social unrest grows. In this chaos, extreme political parties gain the attraction. One of these is a Nazi party led by Adolf Hitler. Hitler, a failed artist turned soldier, joined the party in 1919. He quickly rose through the rank, becoming leader in 1921. Hitler's powerful speeches
für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab. Wenn ja, dann tritt für mich ein, so wie ich für dich eingetreten bin.
tap into the people's anger and the frustration. He promises to restore Germany to its former glory. The Nazi party blames Jews and the communists for Germany's problem. This excuse resonates with many desperate Germans. Meanwhile, the global economy declined in 1929. The Depression or the Great Depression hit Germany hard, causing massive unemployment. People lost faith in the traditional political parties and turned to the extremists. In 1932, the Nazi party became the largest in the Reichstag building. Hitler was appointed chancellor in January 1933. He quickly moved to consolidate his power. The Reichstag building fire in February 1933 gave Hitler a perfect excuse. Civil liberties are suspended and the political opponents are arrested. The Enabling Act of 1933 gives Hitler a dictatorial power. He bans all other political parties, creating a one-party state. The Nazi regime begins to implement its radical ideology. Jews are systematically persecuted and they removed their rights. The economy improves as Hitler initiates massive public work projects. Unemployment drops and many Germans credit Hitler for the turnaround. The Nazi propaganda machine goes into the overdrive. Joseph Goebbels controls all media, spreading Nazi ideas. Children are brainwashed through schools and the youth organizations. The Hitler prepares boys for military services. Girls are taught to be ideal Nazi wives and the mothers. Meanwhile, Hitler begins to rebuild the Germany military. He started recruitment in 1935, violating the Versailles Treaty. The international community tries to stop this action. Hitler became bolder, reoccupying the Rhineland in 1936. The Olympics are held in Berlin, showcasing Nazi power to the world. In 1938, Germany annexed Austria. Later that year, Hitler demanded the region from Czechoslovakia. The Munich Agreement gives into his demand, hoping to avoid war.
The settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace.
But Hitler's appetite for expansion only grows. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, triggering World War II. The rise of Nazi Germany is complete. But at what cost? Millions will die in the coming years of war and the genocide. Let's move on. September 1st, 1936. The world is about to change forever. The roar of German planes fill the sky. What happens is a sequence of events that will plunge the world into the deadliest conflict. The invasion of Poland and how it sparked World War II. Europe in the 1930s was a powder keg waiting to explode. The end of World War I felt many nations bitter and seeking for revenge. Germany, in particular, felt humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler's aggressive expansion plans were no secret. He had already annexed Austria and a part of Czechoslovakia. But Poland was different. It had allied in Britain and France. These nations had promised to defend Poland, but Hitler was fearless. On August 31st, 1939, Nazi did false flag operation. They dressed a German prisoner in Polish uniform and had them attack a German radio station. This gave Hitler an excuse he needed. At 4:45 a.m. on September 1st, German forces crossed the Polish border. The invasion began with the bombing of Wellun, a small town in the Polish. Within an hour, German troops were pouring into the Poland from north, south and the west. The Polish army fought bravely but was overwhelmed. Germany's blitzkrieg tactics proved brutally effective. Tanks, aircrafts and the mortars moved with a shocking speed. Poland's outdated military stood little chance against this modern war machine. Meanwhile, the world watched the horror. On September 3, Britain and France declared war on Germany.
A state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
But their support for Poland was largely symbolic. No significant military aid reached, as if the situation wasn't there enough. The Soviet Union joined the invasion on September 17. Stalin, having signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler, saw an opportunity to grab territory, caught between two powerful enemies. By October 6, Polish resistance had been crushed. The country was divided into Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. The human cost of this invasion was staggering. 10,000s of Polish soldiers and the civilians lost their lives. The invasion also marked the beginning of disaster in Poland. Jewish communities, which had thrived in the Poland for centuries, face an unimaginable horror. The world has changed. The invasion of Poland showed the true extent of Nazi Germany's ambition. It proved that Hitler wouldn't stop at diplomatic bullying or minor land grabs. The conflicts that began in Poland would soon engulf the entire world. Let's move to year 1940. The Nazi Germany seems unstoppable. They have conquered most of Europe, and now their sights are set on Britain. But before they can invade, they need to control the skies. On one side, we have the German Luftwaffe, confident and well equipped. On the other, the Royal Air Force was outnumbered. But fighting on home ground, the stake couldn't be higher. The battle officially started on July 10, 1940. German planes began targeting British shipping convoy in the English Channel. This is just the beginning, a taste of British defenses. As July turns to August, the Germans intensify their attacks. They are targeting RAF airfields and their radar stations. Their goal to cripple Britain's air defense. But the Britons have a secret weapon, radar. This technology gives them a crucial edge, allowing them to spot incoming raids. It's not perfect, but it's also a game changer. The Spitfire became an iconic of the battle. It's fast, agile, and a match for the Bf-109. But it's the well-built Hurricane that shoot down more enemy planes. August progresses. The situation looks grim for Britain. RAF airfields are under constant attack. Pilots are exhausted. But the British have another advantage. They are fighting over home territory. When a British pilot parachutes, he can often return to the fight. A downed German pilot, on the other hand, becomes a prisoner of war. Let's pause for a moment to consider the human cost. These pilots, many barely out of their teens, are risking their lives daily. The average life expectancy of new pilots is measured in weeks. Now, we come to the crucial moment. August 24, 1940. German bombers accidentally dropped bomb on London.
It was the great fire in the city of London, almost to be compared with the fire of London in 1666. Pictures that look like hell on earth.
In retaliations, the RAF bombs Berlin the next night. This provokes Hitler. He ordered the Luftwaffe to shift its focus to London and other cities. It's a critical error. The switch to the bombing cities gives the RAF a much needed respite. They can repair their airfield and get planes back in the air. It's a turning point in the battle. September 15 is the largest air battle of the war so far. The RAF shot down 56 German planes. It's a decisive victory. 2 days later, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, or the planned invasion of Britain. The Luftwaffe has failed to gain air superiority. The Battle of Britain is effectively over. But what made this victory possible? This wasn't just a bravery of the pilot. It was a combination of factors. Radar gave the British early warning. The chain home system allowed for efficient coordination, and the downing system helps manage resources effectively. We should also mention the role of civilians' efforts. The Royal Observers Corps spotted and reported enemy aircraft. Factors or factory workers relentlessly worked to produce new planes. It was truly a national effort. The Battle of Britain had far-reaching consequences. It was Nazi Germany's first major defeat. It boosted Britain's morals and shown to the world that Hitler could be stopped. Now, let's talk about the Eastern Front, Stalingrad and beyond. It's the summer 1942. The Nazi Germany seems unstoppable. Hitler's forces were pushed deep into the Soviet territory. Their next target, the industrial city of Stalingrad on the Volga River. But why Stalingrad? Because it would be a huge propaganda victory for Hitler. Second, it was a major industrial center and the transport hub. Control of Stalingrad meant control of the Volga and the access to the oil-rich Caucasus region. The battle begins on August 23, 1942. The German 6th Army, led by General Friedrich Paulus, launched its assault. At first, Germans made rapid progress. They bombed the city relentlessly, but the Soviet, under the order from Stalin itself, refused to pull back. Not one step back. The Ottoman approaches the battles turns into the brutal urban warfare. Soldiers fight for every street, or on every street, every building, every room. The average life expectancy of Soviet soldiers in Stalingrad is just 24 hours. Yet, they keep fighting, holding on to whatever ground they can. One of the most famous locations in this battle was the grain elevator. For nearly a week, a small group of Soviet soldiers prevented German attacks. This kind of resistance was seen all over the city. Meanwhile, Soviet support was gathering. On November 19, 1942, Operation Ornus begins. Within a day, the Soviets surrounded the entire German 6th Army. About 300,000 Axis soldiers are now trapped in the Stalingrad. Hitler orders Paulus to stand firm, promising relief, but that relief never comes. As the winter set in, conditions for the surrounded Germans become desperate. Food and ammunition runs low. The Luftwaffe's attempt to supply them by air fails miserably. On January 31st, 1943, Paulus surrenders. The battle that cost nearly 2 million lives on both sides is over. Stalingrad makes the first major defeat for Nazi Germany. It's a turning point not just for the Eastern Front but for entire war. But what happens after Stalingrad? The Soviet presses their advantage. They launch a series of offensives pushing the German back. On June 1943, the largest tank battle in history takes place in Kursk. The Soviets emerge victorious, ending any hope of the German comeback in the East. From then on, it's a long, hard pushing eastward for the Red Army. They liberate their own territory and push into the Eastern Europe. Cities like Minsk, Warsaw, and Budapest fall to Soviet forces. Finally, in May 1945, they reach Berlin itself, bringing about the final defeat of Nazi Germany. The cost of this victory was enormous. The Soviet Union lost around 27 million people in the war. Vast areas of land were devastated. But they emerged as one of the world superpowers. Soviet control over Eastern Europe led to a creation of Eastern Bloc. This set to the stage for Cold War that would dominate global politics for decades. Now, let's talk about the event of Pearl Harbor, the day that lived in infamy. It's early morning on the peaceful Sunday in Hawaii. Most of sailors and the soldiers are still on a sleep or just beginning their day. Little do they know a fleet of Japanese aircraft carrier are approaching. At 7:48 a.m. local time, the first wave of Japanese planes appears on the horizon. Within a moment, chaos erupts as bombs and the torpedoes rains down on the suspecting naval base. But why did Japan attack Pearl Harbor? The roots of this conflict stretch back a year before the actual attack. In the 1930s, Japan was expanding its empire in Asia. This expansion put them in a conflict with the United States and other Western powers. As tension rose, the US imposes economic sanctions on Japan. These sanctions cut off important resources, including oil. Japan saw this as a threat to their ambitions and the way to life. They believe a surprise attack on the US Pacific fleet would give them an upper hand. The attack was meticulously planned by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. He aimed to destroy the US aircraft carriers and battleships. This would prevent America from interfering with the Japan's plan in Southeast Asia. The Japanese from 6th aircraft carriers positioned north of Hawaii. As the attack unfolded, American forces were caught completely off guard. The first wave targeting airfields and the battleships, bombs fell on the hangars and the runways, destroying many planes before they could take off. The resulting explosion killed more than 1,000 crew members almost instantly. The second wave of the attack began around 8:50 a.m. By this time, American forces had begun to organize a defense. Anti-aircraft guns were firing, and some US planes managed to take off. However, the damage was already severe. In just 2 hours, the Japanese had dealt a devastating blow. 18 ships were sunk or damaged, including 8 battleships. Over 3,000 aircrafts were destroyed or damaged. 2,400 Americans were killed, and 1,000 were wounded. The attack on Pearl Harbor had immediate and far-reaching consequences. The very next day, President Franklin Roosevelt addressed Congress. He called December 7th a date which will live in the infamy. President asked Congress to declare war on Japan, which they did within hours. This marked the United States' official entry into the World War II. Germany and Italy, Japan allies, declared war on the US soon after. This attack united the American people like never before. Recruitment offices were flooded with the volunteers eager to join the fight. The entire nations mobilized for war, transforming the economy and the society. However, the attack also had a dark side for many Japanese Americans. Most were American citizens, forced to leave their homes and the businesses. This remained a shameful chapter in the US history. In the attack Pearl Harbor, the US military underwent rapid changes. Resources were added into the ships and the aircraft production. New technology were developed at an unprecedented pace. The attack also shifted military strategy, emphasizing the importance of aircraft carriers. Despite the heavy losses, the attack failed to achieve Japan's main objective. The road to recovery at Pearl Harbor begins immediately. As the war progresses, the tide began to turn against Japan. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 was a turning point in the Pacific. American forces sank 4 Japanese aircraft, dealing a blow Japan never recovered from. Pearl Harbor remains a powerful symbol in American history. It represents both tragic loss and the nation's resilience. Now, let's explore one of the darkest chapters in the human history, a time when millions of innocent lives were systematically killed. We are talking about the horrifying event of Holocaust. The Holocaust began in 1933 when Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. Hitler's Nazi party promoted a racist ideology that considered the Aryan race superior. They viewed Jews, homosexuals, and others as inferior and the threat to German society. The Nazis implemented a series of discriminatory laws against Jews. This law removed Jews of their citizenship, jobs, and the basic rights. In 1935, the Nuremberg Law were passed for segregation Jews from German society. Jews were forced to wear yellow stars to identify themselves in public. As Nazi power grew, they started abusing of the Jewish population. In 1938, the Night of Broken Glass occurred. Jews' homes, businesses were attacked and destroyed across Germany. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939, the Nazis' plan became even more sinister. They began to concentrate Jews primarily in Eastern Europe. Many died from disease, starvation, and the brutal treatment. In 1941, Nazis implemented their final solution to the Jews question. This was a plan for the systematically murder of all Jews in Europe. Death camps were established. Jews and other victims were transported to these camps. Upon arrival, many were sent directly to gas chambers. Others were forced into the slave labor, working under horrific conditions. Medical experiments were conducted on prisoners, causing immense suffering and the death. As the war progressed, the pace of killing accelerated. The Nazis aimed to murder as many Jews as possible before their defeat. By the time war ended in 1945, 6 million Jews had been murdered. This number represents about 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. The Holocaust also claimed the lives of millions of others. Now, let's talk about the single weapon could end a world war. Imagine a bomb so powerful it could level an entire city in a second. This isn't science fiction. It's the story of atomic bomb. We are talking about the Manhattan Project, the world's first nuclear weapon. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1939 and World War II has just begun. Scientists around the world are racing to harness the power. Some fear that Nazi Germany might develop an atomic bomb first. Enter Albert Einstein, who writes a letter to President Franklin. He warns about a potential for a devastating new weapons. But what exactly is nuclear bomb? It's the splitting of atoms to release enormous amount of energy. Scientists discovered this process in 1938. They realized it could be used to create a powerful explosive. The race was on to turn theory into the reality. In 1941, the United States officially entered World War II.
I ask that the Congress declare a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
The need for a game-changing weapons became most urgent. The government launched the Manhattan Project in 1942. It's named after the Manhattan engineer. The project is high secrecy. Even Vice President Harry Truman doesn't know about it. The Manhattan Project spread across the country. Major research happens in three main locations. New Mexico became the main laboratory. By 1945, the project is nearly completion. The war in Europe has ended, but Japan fight on. President Truman, now aware of the project, faces a difficult decision. Should the US use this terrible new weapon? On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb is tested. The test is code-named Trinity. It takes place in the New Mexico desert. The explosion is more powerful than anyone expected. Less than a month later, on August 6, 1945, the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. The destruction was unprecedented. Tens of thousands died instantly, with many more affected by radiations. Japan surrendered on August 15, ending World War II. The Manhattan Project changed the world forever. Nuclear proliferation has become a global concern. Now, let's talk about the final days of Nazi Germany. But how did it came to this? What led to the fall of Berlin? The story of Berlin's fall begins long before the first Soviet soldier set foot in the city. In 1945, the Allied forces are advancing from the west. Hitler's once mighty war machine is crumbling. Resources are low, and morale is at all-time low. On January 12, 1945, the Soviets launched their Vistula operation. This massive operation catches the Germans off guard. Soviet forces advance rapidly, covering 300 miles in just 2 weeks. They are now only 40 miles away from Berlin. Meanwhile, the Western Allies are also making progress. They cross the Rhine River in March, entering the German heartland. Hitler, in his bunker in Berlin, refused to accept defeat. He issued increasingly unrealistic orders to his generals. Many German soldiers and the civilians start losing faith in their leader. As April begins, Berlin prepares for the inevitable assault. The city's defenses are hastily reinforced. On April 16, the Battle of Berlin officially begins. Soviet forces, led by Marshal Zhukov and Konev, launched a massive offensive. Over 2.5 million soldiers, 6,000 tanks, and 7,500 aircrafts participated in this attack. The battle is fierce and brutal. Street fighting rages as the Soviets push deeper into the city. German propaganda continued to claim that victory is possible, but for most Berlin citizens, lost the hope. In his bunker, Hitler became increasingly detached from the reality. He moves imaginary armies on map, hoping for a miracle that never comes. On April 29, he marries his longtime companion, Eva Braun, and the very next day, they both commit suicide. With Hitler gone, the remaining Nazi leadership attempt to negotiate. On May 2 or 2nd, 1945, Berlin finally surrenders. The Soviet flag is raised over the Nazi rule. Now, discuss war propaganda. During World War II, propaganda reached new heights. Radio broadcast became a powerful tool for sending or spreading information and the misinformation. The Nazi regime in Germany was using propaganda to control public opinions. They used films, rallies, and the careful crafted messages to build support for their causes. Propaganda also aimed to boost morale on the home front. It encourages citizens to make sacrifices. They inspired women to join the workforce and support the war. Now, let's discuss what civilians experiences during wartime. Imagine waking up to the sound of air-raid siren. This was the reality for many civilians during World War II. But the home front wasn't just about fear and the uncertainty. It was a place of incredible strength and the community spirit. First, let's talk about rationing. Food, fuel, and the clothing were all carefully controlled. Now, let's shift gears to the workplace. With many men at war, women step up into the men's job. Women took on the job in the factories, ships, and the farms. They built planes, tanks, and the ships, keeping the country running. The shift changed the workforce and the society forever. But it wasn't just about work. Communities came together like never before. People gathered around the radios, hungry for news from the front lines. Propaganda posters reminded everyone to keep calm and carry on. Education changed too. Children learned about war geography and the current events. Some areas saw schools close or relocate due to the bombing risk. Healthcare faced unique challenges on the home front, with many doctors and the nurses serving the military or the military people learn basic first aid. Disease like tuberculosis became more prevalent due to the crowded condition. Entertainment took on new importance during these times. Movies, radio shows, and the music providers a much needed escape from the war. But they also serve as a tool for boosting morals and the spreading information. Let's talk about the psychological impact. Constant stress and the uncertainty took their toll. People develop a coping mechanism like a dark humor and the community gathering. Supports network form. Innovation thrived during this time. People found new ways to cook with the limited ingredients. Communication changed dramatically on the home front. Later became lifeline. Many of the changes, especially women's progress. Now, let's discuss the impact of World War II on art and the culture. The global conflict didn't just change the map and the politics. It also changed the creative world. In 1939, and the world is about to get into the chaos. Artists, writers, and the musicians are about to face challenges. Take Pablo Picasso, for example. His famous painting, Guernica, was a direct response to the bombing. It became a powerful anti-war symbol, showing the pain and the suffering of the innocent civilians. Now, let's move on to the literature. Writers face unique challenges during World War II. Many turn to new style of writing to express. Writers risk their lives to keep culture alive. But it wasn't just high art that was affected. Popular culture underwent massive changes too. Let's talk about music for a moment. Before the war, jazz was already popular, but it exploded during the time. American soldiers brought jazz to Europe, where it became a symbol of freedom. In Nazi-occupied area, listening to jazz was an act of rebellion. Speaking of rebellions, let's not forget about swing dancing. Young people in Germany forming a swing club. They dance to Americans and the British music. Now, onto a silver screen. Cinema played a huge role during World War II. In the United States, Hollywood patriotic films opposed the morals. On the flip side, countries like Germany and Italy use films as a propaganda tool. After the war, cinema took a darker turn. Let's shift gears and talk about how the war affected architecture. Cities across the Europe and the Asia were fall apart. This deconstruction led to boom in a modern architecture. Architects saw an opportunity to rebuild cities with new thinking. Now, let's discuss how World War II changed the global culture. Before the war, Paris was considered the world's culture capital. But as Europe was torn apart by conflict, many artists fled to the United States. New York City became a new center of the art world. Soldiers from different countries met and exchanged ideas. Let's not forget the technological advancement. The war also had a significant impact on education. Lastly, let's discuss how World War II changed the role of women in society. With the men away at work, women took a new role in the workplace. As we look back on World War II, we reminded of the terrible cost of conflict. But we also see the resilience of human spirit. The war shaped our world in a countless way. Understanding this pivotal moment in the history helps us appreciate peace we often take for granted. If you found this video interesting, please like and then share it with others. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating journey through history. Until next time, remember, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.